Thanks so much to everyone starting to share where you're tuning in from. That's great. My name is Jennifer Wright. I'm the Acting Executive Director with the Canadian Agriculture Human Resource Council. Our office is located in Ottawa, and the Canadian Agriculture Human Resource Council is grateful that we operate on the unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation, whose people have lived and governed on these lands since the beginning of time. Their culture, values, and beliefs have governed and continue to nurture the lands and resources. And I also really want to welcome everyone from across Turtle Island. As we see with everyone in the chat talking about where you're coming in from, I think we have good coverage across Turtle Island, and really looking forward to the conversation today. Can just move on to the next slide. So today's session, as you know, we are going to be having our guest speaker talk a little bit about the issue of storage from agriculture, food production side of things, and we'll get started on that very shortly. I just wanted to provide a little bit of housekeeping information. I will apologize. Beverly O'Neill is usually our trusted facilitator and host, and she's a very busy lady, and so today was not available. So you're stuck with me for the day or for the session, but hopefully I will do Beverly proud in my hosting abilities here today. So as we've said, you can use the chat function to share information. Dawn will be doing her presentation, and then we can have some Q&A after. There is a Q&A button as well at the bottom of your screen, so you can use that to put forward questions that you would like to be addressed during that Q&A. All of these sessions are recorded, and we are using these recordings to ensure that we can share the information out after for those that aren't able to attend, or if you want to go back and have a resource, a reference as well. So the links will be available on the CAHRC website and our YouTube channel. This is our second set of sharing circles. We did a series in fall 2021. Recordings for that series is also available on our website and our YouTube channel as well. And as a co-host, CAHRC is the co-host for today as well. Just to share a little, I'll share a little bit of information about our organization. We're a national nonprofit organization. All of our work is focused on agriculture. We do a lot of labor market research, as well as developing things like occupational standards, training, skills development, and that type of work. And we support agriculture employers with human resource tools, training, and information. And we have been working with Indigenous producers since about May 2020, and just looking at ways to support connections and support the development of Indigenous agriculture as well. If you want more information, you can check out our website, and there's lots of tools and resources that are free for use there, and you'll get to know us a little bit more that way as well. So, as I mentioned, this presentation, this webinar will start with a presentation, and then we will have lots of time at the end for some Q&A so that we can share information with each other, and you get an opportunity to ask Dawn some questions about her areas of expertise as well. So we're very pleased today to have with us Dawn Tabobondung, and I told Dawn I was going to mess up her last name. Dawn Tabobondung, and Dawn is coming to us as a proud member of the Wasauksing First Nation and a member of the Potawatomi Nation. Sorry, Dawn, yes, please correct me.
Potawatomi.
There we go. Like her grandmother, a Royal Order of Canada recipient, Dawn has always had a strong passion for helping others, especially fellow First Nation members, and her driving philosophy is to provide support and assistance where she can and when she can. I'm sure that you're going to learn so much from Dawn. She is the vice chair of the First Nation Growers Canada organization. She is currently working within a school to provide education directly to high school students. Just a wealth of information, a wealth of experience, and really looking forward to your presentation today, Dawn. So with that, I will turn it over to you.
Miigwech, thank you, Jennifer. Ani bojo nishkano kinkekwe dijnikaz was soxing dinjaba almekdodum Nishnabe Jaganashi Kwe Niandao. I introduced you. My spirit name is One Who Walks Both Worlds, and I'm from Wasauksing First Nation. As Jennifer did say, I'm from the Beaver Clan, and I am a proud Anishinaabe and some English blood in me. Thanks again to the CAHRC for inviting me, for sharing. I only know a little bit of knowledge, but what I do know, I do like to share. So if we can go to the first slide. Thank you. It's just, again, how to sharing circles. I'm gonna show you what we do here on Wasauksing, passed down through generations of curing harmony corn with hardwood maple. That was taught a little story there, as we always thought. My grandmother Flora, it was a Tabobondung recipe, and it was a Tabobondung thing. And then when we actually looked into her background, she was adopted, and it was actually came from the Salt family on the island. So we were so proud, and it was just like, that didn't come from the Tabobondungs, that's come from the Salt family. So it's a little joke in our community. Next slide, please. This is, we don't grow corn on our First Nation. This is where I get my supply from. They're down in Six Nations area, Southern Ontario. As it stands right now, that 40-pound bag of Harmony corn is worth $150 Canadian. Right now they deliver, they do their routes all the way up through the Ontario up north. They also do their own curing of corn, but they do theirs a little bit differently with baking soda. And as we get through the presentation, I'll explain the difference. Next slide, please. So here, what we were taught, passed down, is we use hardwood ashes. And of course, I'm always getting one of the guys to get me hardwood, or my mom. You come across any hardwood maple, please bring it to us. When I did some Googling to get some pictures for the slideshow, I was surprised at how many maple trees there were. So my mother always said, well, how do you know? And, you know, one day I might have to go out and get the wood myself to make those ashes. And she just said, we were told was the tree that had the reddest leaves. That's the ones, the hard maples. So I just took some different colors off the internet here to show you the different colors of leaf, but the one we look for is the red one. So I've been out this fall looking for all those red trees, and being able to go up to that tree to actually just, again, spend time with it, see what it looks like, the difference of them with their bark and stuff like that. So next slide, please. This is the type of pot we use. I'm not too sure what it's called, but my mother says, metal pot, steel. This one is because the lye, when we make the lye from the hardwood ash, that's natural soap, and it's very, very potent. So eventually, after so many boils of our curing corn, that pot will start eroding. So we replace them every once in a while, but they do last longer than the normal aluminum pot, the silver type of pot, and these are much bigger. Next slide, please. This is the first boil with the lye. So with the lye, which is the natural hardwood maple, of course, we make ashes. When I make my ashes, I do it for the full year, not because it's a long process to cure corn. So I made my ashes actually this past winter. Burned all the hardwood, and I keep it, I put them in containers. We actually ship them out to people who want to use the hard maple ash for their curing, because it does leave a different totally taste and aroma to your corn soup when you do make it. I know some people was sharing with others, with our cousins. They don't have hardwood maple, so they will use baking soda. When you use baking soda, I find that it's very salty after you're finished curing your corn, and you do notice the salt in your corn. One of my cousins from Christian Island didn't realize that she said she used any type of wood of ashes to make her first boil with the lye, but she found that it would take longer boils for using this type. It's 5 to 6 boils. Sometimes she said she would have to go 8, 9 boils to get it to a point where the corn is ready. And what we're trying to do here with this lye, with the first boil, is to release that jacket on the corn. That's what the whole process of curing this corn is, to get that jacket off the corn. Next slide, please. So here's the very little white corn. That's its natural state. After the first boil in the lye, you'll see its side. It's got the jacket is yellow. You'll note, and when you pour that white corn into that first boil with the lye, that color changes automatically to that yellow. That it's pretty neat how that happens with regards to that. So when you're making your lye, we first bring that boil to 20 minutes. You bring it to a boil and you let those hard maple ashes boil for 20 minutes. And then you strain it all out. And then you have your first boil ready to put your corn in. So when you put that natural corn in that first boil, again, cold water, you bring it to a boil, you let it boil for 20 minutes, and then you strain it. Next slide. So this is showing you the different boils and then the stages of the corn. So of course you got your raw corn in the first boil. The second boil, you'll notice it's changed color. It's kind of opened up a little bit. Your third boil, you'll see that it's like popcorn almost popping. And then your fourth boil where it's completely white. So through those first boils, each time you're rinsing in cold water. So, and you're actually taking that corn with your hands and you're rubbing it like this together and releasing those jackets. And through each boil, you'll see those jackets start coming off. Depending on the corn, and I've noticed the last couple of years, and I don't know why, the corn's much smaller compared to curing corn maybe 6 years ago. I have no idea why that is, but it's so the corn, you'll notice the last one, the fourth boil, looks pretty small. That's ready there. You'll see I did 4 boils here. I probably boiled the longer boil. So each boil is for 20 minutes. You bring the water to a boil and you let it boil for 20 minutes. I probably let that corn maybe boil, each boil maybe 30 minutes. And then this number 4 with the fourth boil, that corn is ready. And of course, when you do this, it's 6 hours. It takes 6 to 10 hours to go through those stages of each boil. So it's not just making a small bit of corn to make a pot of soup for the day. It's actually boiling those 2 pots I showed you. My mom and I will do 2 full pots of curing corn. And then we use the air vacuum seal and seal our corns. And that's how we store it. I actually put it in our local stores here. My mother, she's known, my grandmother is well known for her corn because you can have that little bit of taste of maple in that corn. And when you're actually making your soup, you can smell that maple in the corn and you can actually taste it. There is a big difference, like I said, with regards to the using, I'm got tongue-tied here. Baking soda. Down south, they use baking soda because they don't have hard maple trees. I don't know if they've ever even tried other trees. What would be interesting, because my one cousin in Christian Island does do that. but it's very salty depending how much you use. So you got to really watch with regards to how much baking soda you do use. And the whole point of that is getting that jacket off. And again, you got to remember when you are using ashes, that is raw natural soap that you've actually made. So I know my grandmother, when I would cure corn with her, it was very important for those in between boils when you're rinsing to make sure, you know, you're rinsing well, you're using clean water for each boil, because you have to make sure you remove any of the particles from the ashes with regards to that. Now, I should make clear that the first boil is only with the ashes. The second boil would be with clear water, third boil, clear water, and the fourth boil, and possibly a fifth boil, clear water. So it's initially that first boil with the ashes. Next slide. So this is, you know, with regards to the corn, this is the natural state. Corn, with our recipe with corn soup, there's many different recipes that, you know, when you look on the internet now, there's people will make it with clear. No, my grandmother's recipe for her soup is a cream. With regards to using ham hocks, which are pig's ankles, is making the broth of that soup, cream and mushroom soup, if you can believe that, and some carnation milk, and that's it for the recipe. Of course, making your base for your soup, we always throw in that 1 potato, 1 carrot, 1 onion, and boil that with the pork hocks and some salt pork. And that's used to make your broth. And then from that point on, some ladies you add your corn, and that last, when you add the corn, that from that last boil, that's when it'll pop and it looks like popcorn. So it actually does look like popcorn when you actually put it in your soup. Some ladies will add kidney beans to it, different beans. I've started using the cured corn in salads, bean salads, or I like it just as a cold snack in the fridge. Very good in protein. And we all know about the Three Sisters legend and how it works with those 3 vegetables and the corn, the squash, and the bean. No one in our community that I know in our area does have even attempted to grow the harmony corn. And like I said, we do get it from our brothers and sisters from 6 nations down south. But it's we passed this generation technique on 4 generations now. My 2 daughters know how to do it. So everyone's so happy because my mother is now 83, and they're just happy that they passed this on, because everyone's asking, you know, when we have a function in our community, it's just the question is who made the corn soup, which is kind of funny because it's a different tasting, really good corn soup with regards to the cream corn soup. That's my presentation, short but sweet. So I guess I will open up to any questions or clarifications with regards to any of you today.
Thanks, Dawn. That was really interesting, and we certainly do have some questions coming in. I really liked learning about the difference between using the lye and the ashes between the baking soda, as well as it's not just about hardwood or about maple trees, but it's about the maple trees with the red leaves. So this type of knowledge, I think, is extremely important to be passing along, and it's really interesting. For me, there are some questions. I'm going to ask one that came to mind. You mentioned how long it takes between for each stage. When you boil the corn, do you let it cool down completely or do anything in between each stage?
Okay, all right. Yeah, so between each boil, of course, you're straining it, putting it into a strainer, running cold water because it's very hot, of course.
Yeah.
So you do have to let it cool down, but what we do to speed up that process, so we're not there for 20 hours like curing corn, we run the cold water tap over it to cool it down, and with the water running down the tap, we're picking up the corn and putting it under that water and trying to release those jackets faster.
Right.
So, you know, that takes about a half hour to get that process done, because with doing that, you're actually making sure that you're removing any lye
Yeah.
from the corn, because that's the most important part when you are using ashes, because that is poison, right? It's a natural soap. So one of the technique, which is really funny, because when I start, every once in a while I'd pop in and visit my mom, and she'd be curing corn, so I just kind of just step in and help and at different stages. And the one time that I finally did it with her from the beginning to the end, and when you're doing that, my hands were so soft.
Yeah.
They felt like a brand new baby's bottom. And
Yeah.
I said to my mom, I said, oh my God, I said, you know what? Next time we do this, save that lye after curing the corn. I'm gonna use and do a pedicure with my feet.
Yeah.
And I have, and unbelievable, you know, when you soak your feet in Epsom salt, you gotta soak for a long while. Using that lye from after your first boil, you're soaking your feet maybe 5 minutes tops, and
Wow.
it's unbelievable and just much faster. So there's another little teaching that I learned just along the way. It's a great way to do your own pedicures.
Yeah. Oh, that's
Um,
great.
yeah. So
Yeah.
the important thing is, you know, making sure the corn is well rinsed in between those boils under that cold water, and making sure you're removing any of the lye that might have seeped in underneath the jacket, sitting in there and stuff like that. That is, I would say, the most important thing.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. And there's a few questions that have come up around how you use the ashes and the lye. Roxanne is wondering, are the ashes in the water? And how much ashes do you use for a 5-gallon pot, for example?
Okay, so that pot I showed you, I think probably is 5 gallons. A cup of ashes. Sometimes if we don't have cheesecloth, we just put it right in the water, and then use a really fine mesh strainer and strain that. So, and because some of the ashes, you might have big chunks of charcoal from that where it's not, so you strain that. So, and if we do have the cheesecloth, of course, we put that cup of ashes in the cheesecloth, tie it up, and that's how we boil it. And then I mean, that just eliminates you having to pour hot water and a strainer into another bucket, and for injury purposes. So it's whether you have the cheesecloth or not, just determines how you're going to do that, get that lye ready for that first boil.
Excellent, great. And do you add more lye to each boil, or is it just in the first boil?
First boil only. That's it. That's the one boil with the lye, and that's all you need. And that first boil is usually a little bit extra longer, 40 minutes boiling in the lye. And then because that, I guess the acid or whatever in that soap is whatever it does releases that jacket, or opens up that little jacket to finally, and it's each boil you'll notice it peels and that jacket is coming off. And then when you're doing this under the water, it loosens it even more. So that's and then you'll notice your second boil, when it's boiling, those jackets are getting released. The other thing is, in that corn, when it's about the second boil, you'll see a little black eye. You want those to be removed too. I mean, it's okay if they're on, but those usually is the indication that your corn is ready, to those black eyes have come off the corn with the jacket. I don't think my slides showed. I'll have to remember that to make sure that I take a picture of one that shows that little black eye. But you really do notice them when you're going through that process with regards to each stage of each boil.
Yeah, excellent. And just staying in line with the boiling process, is the corn dried before you start the boiling process? And at what stage is the corn harvested?
Yes, it's dried. So that sack of corn, that was from, I got that in the spring. So it would have been last year's stock. So that's stored there. That's how they sell their corn in those 40 bags. So it's dried corn. It's off the cob. It's off their the husk and everything like that, you can get corn on it, but then you're spending the time of cleaning that off the husk that it grows on and stuff like that. So we tend to just buy it already ready to cure. We just store it like that. I actually went and bought just a plastic container with wheels, so it's easier for my mom to pull out of the closet and over to the sink, and to help with mice in your home.
Yeah.
And it's sealed shut. I think it was a container for dog food or something like that, where it had the rubber.
Yeah.
That's what we used to store the dry corn in prior to curing it. And then when we cure it, it's just, we do up 2-cup bags and 5-cup bags, and just air seal. We find it lasts longer. Anything just like your meat with the air sealer, sealing it that way, as opposed to just using freezer Ziploc bags, because the less air in your bag, of course, it's going to last longer. And then it even squeezes it, so you have more room in your freezer to store more.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And actually, one of the questions coming in from the audience was, how long would the corn last once it's been cured?
And the freezer, after you've done it, air seal, when you use that, it could, I've seen our corn up to a year, 6 months to up to a year. I mean, and to be honest, it doesn't last that long when people know you've got cured corn and it's done with hardwood maple. It doesn't last long whatsoever. I think my mom and I are probably curing corn maybe every 2 months, especially now with feast time coming up. The 1st of November is when we're doing our feast.
Yeah.
We go through a lot of corn with regards to getting it to our local stores. We supply 2 stores, and then community events. We're always donating for big pots of soup when with our events, and even funerals. We donate their cure. So we always have pure corn in our freezer, because you just don't know when someone wants it or doing a ceremony, and that's one of the dishes that you need for ceremony. So
excellent. And also wondering, can you can the corn in jars, or is the best way really to freeze it?
I would think you can, with mason jars. I mean, you can anything with mason jars, so why not? The only thing I would say is you got air in it, so that's the only thing so possible for freezer burn to happen, right?
Yeah.
That would be the only thing. I mean, here where I work, like I said, we need to buy corn, and I'm going to show the kids how to cure corn, and we're going to have our own corn, because they buy it from the can.
Right.
And we know what they put in that with all the preservatives. And so it's actually, my aunt brought back a case of corn from my mom from the Potawatomi gathering this summer. And I kind of said, her sister, and I said, Mom, why would she bring that? She knows we cure corn.
Yeah.
And I actually looked at it, and it's good until 2025.
Wow.
So just, great. But what are you putting into your body?
Right.
That's, I don't know, but you know what, with that question, I'm definitely going to try using a mason jar, and maybe even with just a little bit of water, right? So it's submerged in water, it's frozen, but I'm definitely going to try that. And another thing I wanted to try before was tongue-tied with names, which I'm terrible for, is popping it like popcorn to see what happens.
Oh yeah.
I've never done that, but it was our host who couldn't make it because she's very busy. I'm tongue-tied for her name. Terrible.
Beverly O'Neill. Yeah.
Beverly, with our last committee meeting, she mentioned, have you tried, like, can you pop that? And I said, geez, I don't know. And that's one thing on my list that I want to try and do, is what happens, right?
Yeah.
To that. So it'll be interesting.
You'll have to keep us posted on that.
I definitely will.
Yeah. And another question coming in related to the corn from the audience is, what is the difference between the corn you use and typical yellow corn? Is the corn you use difficult to grow and process?
Well, I don't grow it. So I know, talking to the gentleman who delivers it, and one time the owner came up on deliveries and had a chance to talk to him. They got it down pat. Big farms down in Six Nation areas. I think during COVID, like with anyone, it affected them. Their harvest wasn't as good because they didn't have the workers to get it all harvested. But the difference between that yellow corn for popping popcorn, that popcorn is very tiny and yellow. This corn that we use, harmony corn, is a lot bigger. But I have seen different types of harmony corn. I always thought there was just one type of harmony corn, but our relatives that are way up north, Timmins area, she called us up and said, hey, I got a gift and it's harmony corn, but it's not the same harmony corn that I get from you guys. And I said, can you send me a picture? Because she wanted to know, how long do I cure this for? And it was like, well, send me a picture. And it was really funny. It was like almost like a heart-shaped corn, really tiny.
Yeah.
And two little things. And I said to her, I said, well, by this being that small, I don't think it would take as long as the harmony corn we use, because it's big, right?
Right. Yeah.
And I just told her to, just do each boil and taste test it, maybe after your second boil to see. Because again, you overboil your corn, just like it goes mushy, right?
Right.
And that's what you don't want to do, because then, just like anything, when we make our soup, you want to eat it right away, because when it sits in the thing, it absorbs the water and it gets mushy. So I do know there are different types of harmony corn, which I didn't know that until our relative up north phoned us up to say, hey, I got this type of corn, and how do you do this?
Yeah. Oh, that's great. We have a kind of 3 more questions related to the lye specifically. So the first question is, what is lye exactly?
That's a natural state of soap. From my understandings from my mom, that's what they used to make their own soap way back in the day when we didn't have ivory, the first bar of soap. So that was used to wash things. I'm not too sure. Maybe it was used. That's something that I might have to engage with my mom some more with regards to, her remembering exactly, lye, that soap, we know that. And I do know it's very poisonous, because my grandma was always keen on making sure you rinse that corn very well, because someone digesting that and too much of it, right?
Yeah.
You would hate for that to happen. But I just, I think of my grandmother when she was little being taught, they were doing this by the shore on open fires, right?
Yeah.
And the process of that long, it's a 10-hour day from the beginning to end, after you got it all in your packages and air sealed and in your freezer. It's a long day. But the lye, I'm sure with different woods of just, again, playing around. And like my cousin on Christian Island, who uses just any wood she can, any ashes. It makes lye, but I guess with the hardwood maple and that maple, it must be a little bit different. I'm not sure. I've never really asked about that, because on our First Nation, we have lots of hardwood maple, so I don't have to worry about going very far to find it. And especially when we see a tree down from lightning or storm.
Yeah.
We will always get one of the guys, hey, you need to go harvest that and bring it. And we just keep it separately from our firewood and know that's our wood for hardwood maple.
Excellent. And someone in the audience is wondering if you could explain how to make that lye or the ashes. What's that process look like?
So it's just, again, finding your hardwood maple or whatever tree you're going to use and making a fire, but you don't want to use your campfire where you're throwing garbage or burning stuff. I always use a clean spot. Wintertime is great because you got the snow. So one thing I found about doing it in wintertime, though, I got kind of lazy. So made the fire and had all this ashes, and it was late, and I thought, oh, I'll come out in the morning and get my ashes. Well, snow, it was all wet. When you make a fire and you leave it to cool down, it's powder and that. well, winter time, you pick it up right after. So we have this this container that's for ashes from a wood stove during when you know, to empty. So we have one of those specifically just for our hardwood ashes. So when it's burning, you're always out there scooping those ashes and keeping them, especially wintertime. Summertime, of course, you can just build a great big fire, as long as it's not raining, of course. Let it die out overnight and go the next morning, and then you're just shoveling those ashes. I mean, you're not going too far, you're leaving a bit on the ground, so you're not picking up any dirt. But I always say a little dirt won't hurt, right? I mean, we were kids and we were probably eating dirt at some point, but but so that's the difference of just making sure to, you know, don't leave it when it rains. Don't get that little laziness that I got, because it was all wet, and then I still gathered it, but then it took a while to dry, because now it's in my container, right? I was afraid that it was going to go, whether ashes can go bad or anything, but I was always had the lid off when the sun was out, and I was stirring it around, mixing it up from the bottom to the top, and it eventually dried and went to the powdery. When you come to a fire pit that's left out and gone out.
Yeah, excellent. And so I think that really helps and provides some more information about how to make it. There's also a few questions around, I guess, when does the lye become lye? Is it the ashes that are then referred to as lye, or is it more that when you're ready to start the curing process, that the ashes are mixed with water and then that combination becomes the lye?
I think when it comes to that boiling point and you watch it's boiling, then you'll notice bubbles or suds. So it's almost like a natural white soap. I mean, I don't know if you continue to boil that down, whether that's when you end up with actual soap. I don't know, but I know when when you put the ashes into your water and you bring that to a boil and it's boiling, it, you know, it gets bubbles and foamy and stuff like that. So you know, 20 minutes, 40 minutes of that boil like that, you know, you've got it where it's going to help with curing that corn and releasing that jacket. And the main purpose of that is just to break that seal on the jacket of the corn.
Right. Okay, excellent. And this is a really good question. Do you think that this sort of process would work with other dried vegetables like beans?
Well, yeah, I mean, I've only, not that I eat a lot of beans because they don't, they affect me like bad. But I actually had to make white beans from the hard state, and just like wild rice where you got to soak it overnight.
Yeah.
Soaking that, I found I don't see having to do that with beans, because as long as you soaked your beans, just like wild rice, overnight in cold water, when you come to it the next morning, you see that it's expanded and it's kind of opened up a little bit, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I wonder too if the same flavor then would come through as, would come through in the corn through this process as well. Probably.
I would think so, and just making sure that you rinse it well. And using beans, I would suggest that not to boil it as long in that lye, right? Because that corn, it's very hard and firm, well, that bean is, but it's just different. Like when you soak that bean and overnight, it's like that you're not trying to remove the skin off of it, right? With the kidney bean or a white kidney bean, where that lye, that purpose is to help open that seal of that jacket that's on the Harmony corn.
Yeah, great. Excellent. There's still some more questions coming in and we still have a little bit more time. So if you're in the audience and you have a question related to this, or as I mentioned, Dawn is just a wealth of information and knowledge. So, any questions you might be curious about, don't hesitate to put them in the Q&A box, and we'll make sure that they get over to Dawn as well. So another question kind of related to the process and how combinations of how much you put in of each thing. This one is from Roxanne, and it says, so the lye is added with the cup of the ash. How much of this is needed? I think we talked about this a little bit. And can you get it in a powder or liquid form, or is it specifically the way that it comes naturally? I guess the question.
Yeah, no, the lye is just, it comes from the ashes. To make that lye liquid form, you need those ashes. So when you think of the baking soda, if you don't have access to ashes, or you don't want to try and use other wood ashes because it's a longer process, the baking soda, when you buy, the funny, I've only done it once with baking soda. It was with our food bank, with our church. They had me come in to cure corn with maple ash, and then the other lady who was part of the church, with the food bank, she always did hers in baking soda. So we said, well, let's do both batches, because I've never seen it. And then we could, and that's when I did the tasting difference and testing, right?
Yeah.
And the same thing with the baking soda, when she didn't have to boil it first, she just put it in with her first boil with the corn and the baking soda. So one boil was eliminated with the baking soda versus the making your own lye. And again, like I said, with baking soda, it's salty, the corn. You really, really notice that difference. Where with the hardwood maple, the flavor, you even smell it when you're cooking your corn, and boy, the flavor is just, you come in and it's just like, oh, you're curing corn, right? Or did you just cure corn? Because it stays in the house for a little while too afterwards.
Yeah. And is that flavor kind of like, it must be a bit of a smoky flavor that comes from the ashes?
I wouldn't say smoky, I'm trying, not, I wouldn't say smoky, almost like maple syrup, I would think, when
Okay.
I'm thinking about it,
Yeah.
it's just a soft, sweet aroma.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Excellent. That's great. Any other questions from our audience before we move on to our next step? This has been really great, Dawn. I've learned a lot personally, and makes me hungry for lunch, that's for sure. Any other questions coming in? I love that in the chat feature that everybody's sharing where they're from, and I see we even have a few people making connections in the chat. Leslie and Misha, I think, found out that they're both have lived in the same community, maybe not now, but it's really nice to see people making those connections as well. That's a good thing about the virtual environment. You never know who you're going to connect with. And that's certainly one of the things that we've been hoping is happening with the sharing circles, that you get an opportunity to connect with people that you might not otherwise, and learn different techniques about different things about food production as well. So that's really great. Dawn, is there anything else that you wanted to share with us before we move on? We have about, I think about 15 more minutes in our scheduled time. But if there's anything else you wanted to share, I know before we started, and it's off topic of what the webinar is on, but we were talking a little bit about some of the things that you're working on now, and that may be of interest to listeners.
Okay. Yeah. One thing I'm going to say is I'll share my email in the chat, because if anybody who wants to try curing corn, I do not mind sending a little bit of ashes out to them with enough corn to just try it if they don't have access to corn. It's all about sharing, giving them that experience of, doing that, where I'm going to type in my email address here, just so anyone, please reach out. If you think of a question even after this, please do reach out and I will get back to you. Currently, just what I do now is I'm it's called the 7th Generation Program Coordinator. It's at a private school, high school, where our students from Bear Island, Tandamega, come to high school. So they're, again, with Truth and Reconciliation. they're trying to help and get back. So they implemented to get our history into the curriculum. So I'm here to help, find the resource people to bring in, collaborate, find out where some of those teachings fit in what class, like I'm in the Robinson Huron Treaty. So again, I'm finding, well, that fits, of course, in history, because there's a lot of history to our treaties, and then geography. So, and that's what I do currently. As far as First Nation growers and how I got involved with the Canadian Agricultural Human Resource Council was through Beverly before COVID. Where they were just trying to get input from Indigenous across Canada with regards to what are they doing. And she found me on my website and just kind of reached out to me saying, hey, we're kind of doing these sharing things. Would you like to attend? And I did, continued. And that's one of the things with my grandmother, what sticks to me is just like sharing and planting those seeds, with our people. It's not about holding on to that knowledge. We got to share that knowledge. So it's just like share. I promote indoor growing myself with First Nation growers, only because, when you think of our soil, where we're at, and, again, Western call it climate change. My view is totally different with that. It's just with all of us and how we polluted Mother Earth. She's just responding. She's sick. She's acting out. So again, with that is just, I'm a Star Trek fan from growing up. And you think of like your phones, this Zoom, we're there, right? When you think of Star Trek back in those years, I'm waiting for Beam Me Over, Scotty. But in those, thinking back, watching them was when they would go visit Earth, they were all in bubbles. Right?
Yeah.
Their foods were, and I'm thinking, and we're not working fast enough to do something with our soil. And, one day we're not going to be able to grow. So it's again about promoting that indoor growing. There's so many different styles, so many different ways. I've never actually got a facility up. I mean, that's a wish list, and that's on my one, maybe not me, but my children might do it now that they're all finished school.
Right.
But it's something that, promoting and sharing that to anyone and everyone is, unfortunately, that's, we have to think of that. And one of the biggest things, again, is where my passion is, our medicines. Again, if we can't grow vegetables, what are we going to do when we can't grow our sage? Our sweetgrass stops growing, and I experimented a couple of winters ago with sweetgrass and growing it inside during the winter under lights, and it works. Got busy, didn't continue it, but I do know it works. But I think of those things, where are we going, and then again, God forbid, but if we ended up having to go to outer space and live in those places that they're building for us, what about our ceremonies? Because part of our ceremonies are about universe, the moon and the sun, and we don't have our medicines to do those ceremonies. How are we supposed to connect?
Yeah.
That's where my passion is with our medicines and finding ways to, thinking ahead. Again, Tabobondung. Typo error from the government. It's supposed to be a D instead of a T, and Tabobondung, which means to see ahead. That we see ahead. So, I kind of think down, my grandchildren, my great grandchildren, 7 generations from now, where are we going to be, and whether we can provide food from, can Mother Earth still provide for us? We don't know. And but so that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, no, and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your experiences. It's really appreciated. I know, as you mentioned, Beverly connected us a little bit ago now, and I know from our organization's point of view, we're very pleased to have made that connection. You're just a wealth of information and knowledge, and such an open book to share that knowledge, as well, as you said. Wondering too, if you might, when you share your email address, if you might share your website as well, because I've definitely been on the website. Lots of great information there as well. And that would be really good for the audience as well. Another question has come in just before we start to get closing off. A question about accessing cured corn. So how easy is it to buy cured corn if you're in the city, like Winnipeg, for example?
My slide will be up. If you go back, there's that's why I took a picture of my supplier. They will ship. You just got to go back, write down that address, even their phone number. 519-875. I didn't get 2165 or the address. You reach out to them, they would mail it. So that isn't an issue with regards to, you know, of course, like I said, that 40 pounds is when I first started curing corn with my mom, it was $80 a bag, that bag, and now it's 150. So that's the, you know, inflation and what's all going on with the world and where they're at with prices. So I do know that they will mail it. They actually drive up, but they always say, you know, if you run out, just give us a call. We can put it on the bus, you know, type of thing, put it on the train and get it to us.
Yeah, excellent. That's great. Really great. Well, we are getting close to closing time. And the information, as I said, it's just been fantastic sharing your knowledge and sharing this information. I know, as I said, I'm getting hungry. I think everyone else is too. So one thing that we do need to do, I'll remind everyone, obviously, that the next sessions that are coming up, Erin, if you just want to move forward to that, we do have sessions that are coming up today, November 1st. So we'll be looking at greenhousing and community gardens. So easy ways to get connected and register for that. November 15th will be food labeling. And is that the end of our series? Nope, one more on November 29th around beehives. So really encourage you to register, encourage you to provide feedback. Each of you will receive a post-session survey as well, so we can make sure that we continue to, you know, build on the information that's being shared and implement some new ideas as they come through the survey as well. Thank you, Dawn. Thank you so much. As I've said, your knowledge and your openness to share is just fantastic, and I think it was a really great session. Also, thank you to Erin for all your back of behind the scenes organizing and making sure that everybody is connected in and getting what they need from a technical point of view as well. Please do join us on November 1st for the next sharing circle as well. And I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their day. I know in Ottawa, the sun is shining, I think, and where Dawn is, I think you said it was raining. So hopefully sunshine's coming your way, and hopefully everyone else is having a good afternoon as well. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you. It was nice to be here. Bama P, go out with everyone. Thank you for listening.